Hello everyone, I'm Sonal Chandalia. I'm the Chief Nutritionist at the Diabetes Endocrine Nutrition Management and Research Center in Mumbai. Today we are going to talk about a topic related to diabetes, which is actually related to all of us in our social life. That is the consumption of alcohol. So we always say that drink if you must. But there are certain do's and don'ts which are very important, and I'm going to take you through that journey to understand that if one must drink for social reasons, then how one is to arrange it in their lifestyle, with their nutrition, with their diet, as well as calories, and most importantly, the glycemic control. So let's go through the whole process of understanding that what is the caloric content of alcoholic drinks. You'll find that on an average, whether they are liquors and cordials, whether there is whiskey, whether it is a dry wine, whether it is a sweet wine, or whether it is even a vodka, you'll find that overall they usually give you a range of calories from about 60 to 80 calories for about one serving. And that one serving usually in most of the drinks are about 30 ml, which is one small peg. So all in all, when we consider, it is 1 gram of alcohol which usually is giving about 7 calories. So we must understand that how we are consuming the alcohol, what is the quantity, and those limitations and the recommendations are very important on how to include them in our life and whether one has to or not, which is highly related to the glycemic control that one manages to maintain. So what would be the recommendation for consumption of alcohol? There are definitely some do's and don'ts that one has to follow when one has diabetes, whether you have a type 1 diabetes or a type 2 diabetes. So considering this, the literature today tells us that usually complete and total abstinence is better. But if one has to undertake social drinking, it has to be done with that understanding, awareness, and making good choices. The limit of the alcohol intake would technically be about only one small peg or 30 ml per day, but people do say that for social drinking to go up to 60 ml or 2 small pegs per day is quite fine. But making these informed choices, that moderation is the key. What one needs to take into consideration is that one has to also see the kind of foods that one is eating with the alcohol that one is consuming. So the foods that one should usually consume is of the type which will be non-fried or non-deep fried, which will not be heavy creamy foods, but they are more lighter. They may be starters which are of the type which are more steamed, they may be more baked, they may be grilled, because these will not add the calories. Because the calories that get added with the binging that goes on sometimes with the alcohol intake only worsens the process, because you will end up with a lot more of a high blood sugar post meal with the kind of foods you consume. So we know that the short-term impact is that it can cause hypoglycemia, as I mentioned, but the long-term impact of alcohol intake on a regular basis actually causes hyperglycemia or raises the blood sugar levels. So this is something one needs to keep in mind, because the medications that one has been prescribed, whether it is tablets or whether it is insulin, we need to know that does it also interact with that alcohol, and what is the dosage that you're taking when you're consuming alcohol, as well as the kind of food that you're consuming with it. So when we think of those things, we need to remember that responsible drinking is the key. There has to be a balanced approach. It has to be for your well-being. You have to choose wisely. The most important points to remember when you're consuming alcohol is to not choose ones which are very sweet. They should usually be mixed with only water, ice, or soda, and there are to be the unsweetened options, like you may have dry wines over sweet wines, or to avoid the cocktails because they are usually mixed with sugar syrups, and that's why they add to the sugar intake in your diet. So one also needs to remember the frequency with one is drinking in a particular month or in a particular week. It has to be minimal, and also how you pace it when you are attending a party or a social. It has to be paced out and gradually had over a period of few hours, so that it goes in very slowly and along with the correct type of food that one has to consume. So when we consider and consume alcohol, and you're a type 1 or a type 2 diabetic, we need to remember is that you need to omit equivalent calories which are from carbohydrate or even a fat exchange in the diet. So that is the exact exchange that is required when one consumes alcohol. Also, consumption of alcohol is slightly dehydrating. So it's important to hydrate well, drink water alongside, and not have it neat, because that would be very concentrated and cause more dehydration. So while you're enjoying that social drinking, you also need to keep in mind that you pair your drink with certain healthy options. They have to be in the form of more of salads, they can be in the form of dips, they can be non-fried, they can be in the form of a small portion of which are protein or nut or fat, the kindly fat-rich snacks. But do remember that it is the portion control that one needs to maintain even while consuming the alcohol. Otherwise, you may have actually limited the alcohol to the correct limit, but you may have gone overboard with the food that you are consuming. So you need to not only sip smart, you also need to eat smart along with the alcohol intake. There are a few further recommendations that we need to consider, which are certain things that we need to avoid, is that there should never be even on a single time an excessive alcohol consumption, because that can be quite detrimental to your blood sugars. So moderation is the key at any point of time. You do not consume alcohol alone, but you need to have it with healthy snack options and keep a balance, as we mentioned earlier. The drinks should not be very sweetened. You try to have the unsweetened versions, like which doesn't have very high sugar. Do remember that in the lighter beverages like beer, they do contain higher calories and more carbohydrate, because it is made from a particular cereal which is fermented. So apart from keeping in mind the calories that one may get from beer, we also need to keep in consideration that the sweetened breezers also contain a high amount of calories. They may be just sweetened even with regular sugar or molasses, but they all will contribute to your hyperglycemia, and therefore they are completely avoidable when one thinks of drinking. Therefore, it is very important to remember and to understand which drinks work for you and which don't, and which ones are completely avoidable, because you need to monitor and keep track of your blood glucose levels post drinks, so that you also know how did the drinks and the food behave with you, and stick to the ones that work for you. Once you are able to understand that, you can partake of a small amount of alcohol as advised by a healthcare professional or the doctor, and that completely depends on your glycemic control. So kindly remember that drink, but if you need to, and then it has to be judiciously.